Now, for 4 years, Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews tried to keep this secret. It's a deal that he signed in 2017 with the Chinese dictatorship. And only last night did the government release that document, forced to by the Victorian Parliament. And that alone is sinister. Why would the Premier of an Australian state want to keep hidden the promises that he made to the world's biggest dictatorship, one that is now threatening war against Australia? Now, the government's excuse is that China signed it with an expectation of confidentiality, to which I say Australians have a very different expectation from their governments of openness. But looking at this deal, I can understand why Daniel Andrews wanted to keep a secret from Australia. In it, he promises that Australia, or particularly Victoria, is going to promote projects, infrastructure and utilities to strengthen business links with China and create an information exchange to help China get infrastructure deals. And in fact, Andrews put out another document back then outlining his vision that Victoria would become China's gateway to Australia. And boy, has Andrews delivered. He's ordered massive infrastructure projects, many involving Chinese companies. Melbourne's Metro Tunnel and the Westgate Tunnel. The lead contractor, Chinese-owned builder. The North East Link, Chinese company, is in the consortium. And it's all part of what China calls its Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, meant to secure its supply routes and extend its influence. I spoke a short while ago to Paul Monk. He was head of the China desk in the Defence Intelligence Organisation. And he is the author of books like Dictators and Dangerous Ideas. And I asked him, Daniel Andrews' secret deal with China, did it concern him?
What concerns me in the first instance is the secrecy. What concerns me in the second instance is that the deal is with a strategic player on an altogether different scale to Victoria, and Daniel Andrews appears to have walked in to water over his head. So a lot of questions need to be asked about how was he thinking in this regard? What was the advice given to him, and why the secrecy for 4 years?
Well, obviously, we do know that a couple of his advisors, one in particular, was part of a group run by China's official propaganda arm. I'm not saying that that was significant in this, but it does suggest something. What do you think China was looking for in a deal like this?
I think there were three things, and we can see in retrospect that they in fact all took place. The first was that it was out looking for subnational leaders to participate in the BRI. And Daniel Andrews is proud of the fact that he was the first one. He shouldn't be proud of it because he's been manipulated, and this was a propaganda stunt. The second thing is that the National Development and Reform Commission in China, which sort of runs the BRI, got this public-private partnership deal with him. And it was almost like that was a sweetener. Then they said to him, why don't you come to Beijing, which he duly did in May 2018 for the big BRI fiesta, 1,500 people from many different countries. He was the only Australian subnational leader to be there. And he was wowed by what they said about the BRI, and he said there's going to be great opportunities for Victoria. And so, of course, in October 2018, he signed up to the BRI. So it's all been part of a strategy by the NDRC and the Chinese government to be able to operate in Australia independently of federal oversight. That's the big issue, as Daniel Andrews was reminded by the federal government recently.
Now, the Belt and Road Initiative, this BRI, in part is to guarantee China's supplies into the future. But is it just that?
No, it can't be that for a couple of reasons. One is that insofar as China has long since been a member of the World Trade Organization and has been participating in massive free trade networks, more or less free trade, but China's mercantilist, so that's a problem. But global trade has enjoyed open markets in the OECD countries and has prospered greatly. It doesn't have a problem in guaranteeing supplies. It doesn't need to do that. All it needs to do is work by the standard rules. What it's trying to do is exert geopolitical influence. And some people might say, oh, but other wealthy states do the same. The US, the Europeans have done this. What's the problem with China doing? Well, the problem with China doing it is that China is a rather unpleasant dictatorship. And so when it spreads its influence, that's the influence it's spreading. And that's the problem we have with it, not that China is trading. We've encouraged it to do that.
And finally, Paul Monk, Daniel Andrews' argument has always been, yes, but these deals mean Victorian jobs. Is that good enough?
Not in the greater scheme of things, and we can see that very sharply now. I mean, if China was in fact going out of its way to play by global rules of trade and geopolitics, and if it was making clear that it fully respected our interests, then some extra jobs in Victoria would clearly be welcome. But to turn a blind eye to what China is really doing under Xi Jinping and say, we've got some extra jobs in Victoria, so there's nothing to see here, is a very strange way of looking at the situation we're now in. To be fair to the Andrews government, that was not apparent to the same extent in 2017, but it's very apparent now. And so the questions that are being asked of the Andrews government are in the first instance directed at saying, listen, buddy, wake up. We're one country here, and we do have collective security interests. And that regime that you're so happy is providing some investment and jobs has a very big agenda. That agenda has to get your attention.
Of course, if he had a foreign ministry, which he doesn't, being a state department, a state government, he might know some of these things. But that's what happens when you think you know everything and can do it all yourself. Thank you so much for your help.